They say your past defines you. That's a lie. Your past doesn't define you. It refines you. Welcome to the Mile Marker Mindset Podcast, where real stories meet real change. Hosted by Mark Keith, a voice forged by the miles and refined by the mindset. Shift your mindset. Shift your life. Let's go to work.
Hey, we're back today, Mile Marker Mindset Podcast. You know me, my name is Mark. Next to me is my amazing wife, Meagan. We are hanging out today talking about what happens when you use pause as a weapon, because we talked about the good uses for it last show. So this is the opposite.
Really excited to talk about this. We've done some deep reflection on this and seen not only how has it been used against us in previous relationships, friendships, work, whatever, but also how we might have been guilty of doing the same things. So I'm excited to kind of share and dive into that.
For sure. I was actually about to say that sometimes we are guilty of some of these things ourselves, and it's all about that self-reflection, being able to work on yourself and try and always be a better person.
Absolutely.
So let's dive on in.
Let's do it.
All right. So, as you know, I back into a lot of stores, back into the docks of a lot of stores.
Okay, but actually, remember when I did a ride along with you when you literally hit the store? So you backed into the store?
Hit the store.
I know you hit the wall with your truck. Those thingies.
The pads that we're supposed to hit.
And the whole truck went, and I was like, whoa, you hit the store.
To be clear, folks, I didn't do anything wrong. She's talking about those big, thick pads when we back into docks, and she wasn't really quite expecting the abrupt stop that sometimes happens when you misjudge distance. Anyway, so picture this.
Okay.
You good? All right. I'm backing in with my semi into a dock where I'm supposed to be. Hazards are on. Mirrors are perfectly adjusted, and I'm moving at a snail's pace, trying to be as safe as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Practically doing everything by the book. And then out of nowhere, this tiny little car decides it's a good idea to sneak behind my trailer to go wherever they were going at the store while I'm trying to back. And I tell you, my heart did a little bit of a lurch, and kind of like the feeling when you drop your phone and you're not really sure if it's shattered or not.
Okay, so for the love of everything, tell me that you didn't freak out.
I wanted to. Believe me, every fiber of my being screamed for me to slam that air horn so hard that it would rattle their teeth.
Which, I mean, let's be honest, it would have felt good for about 5 whole seconds when you get that rush of righteous indignation, putting them in their place.
Pure, unadulterated, but fleeting satisfaction.
Yeah.
But that reality would crash back in, no pun intended. Would it have made me safer in the moment? No. Definitely not. Would it miraculously enlighten them and transform the way they drive and make them responsible drivers? No, definitely not. Would it have somehow sped up my docking process? Yeah, probably quite the opposite, I would have to imagine. It probably would have turned a whole minor inconvenience to a full-blown roadside drama with ambulances and everything else.
But see, that immediate reaction, that gut level in the moment thing that feels so right is almost always, without fail, going to make the situation worse.
Absolutely.
Right? It's like throwing gasoline on a tiny flicker of spark. It's inevitable how much worse that's going to be.
It's that split second of the microscopic window of decision-making that do I let my emotions take the wheel, which could potentially wreck my whole day, or do I just take a breath, engage my brain, and respond logically? That's the entire ball game. That's the difference between a minor annoyance and a full-blown meltdown.
You know what, though? This isn't just a trucking thing, and I know you love your dramatic trucking stories, but this really applies to everything. In your marriage, when you're tempted for that one perfectly cutting remark. It's in parenting, when your kid pushes you just one step too far. It's at work, when that email makes your blood boil. It's just life, and there's no escaping the human condition.
That is absolutely true. Which is precisely why last week we delved into the profound wisdom of the pause system. Stop, take a beat, regain control, and whatever you do, don't detonate the situation. It's about being the master of your own emotional domain.
Oh, but honey, this week we are flipping the script entirely and turning the mirror around because sometimes you are not the one wielding the emotional wrecking ball.
That's true. Because what happens when you're not the one blowing up? What happens when someone else, perhaps with a mischievous glint in their eye, takes those very same good tools that we discussed last week for self-regulation and subtly, expertly twist them into weapons pointed squarely back at you?
That's the really messy and confusing part. When you walk into a conversation and you're feeling optimistic, like, okay, we're two perfectly reasonable adults here, but you walk out hours later, even feeling like you got put through a psychological spin cycle, completely disoriented and wondering which way is up.
Or to extend the trucking metaphor, because I love my trucking stories, got them for days. You feel like you just got run over by a metaphorical 18-wheeler of emotional manipulation.
I mean, pretty much. It's the insidious thing is that it's really not obvious at all. It's not dramatic yelling. It's not shouting matches that leave your ears ringing. It's more subtle. It's more calm. It's almost reasonable sounding sometimes, which is why it's so much harder to detect it in the moment.
So help me understand. That isn't genuine curiosity, but a thinly veiled interrogation designed to poke holes in your narrative. It's the I'm just being honest that's actually just a free pass they've given themselves to be utterly cruel and disguised as brutal truth.
So you're saying it's the linguistic equivalent of a Trojan horse?
Yeah, pretty much. And the absolute worst part is that you often don't even recognize it's happening until much, much later. You're lying there awake at midnight, staring at the ceiling, replaying every single word of the conversation, dissecting it like a forensic scientist. And then, with a jolt of horror, you realize, how did I, the protagonist of my own life, suddenly become the villain of the story? It's truly disorienting experience.
Yeah. So I have absolutely walked away from what were supposedly healthy conversations feeling infinitely worse than if we had just screamed at each other for 10 minutes and gotten it over with. Because at least with yelling, you know what you're getting yourself into and you know what you're dealing with. But the subtle stuff leaves you with that emotional whiplash.
That's the truly dangerous side of seemingly good, healthy tools. Concepts like boundaries, honesty, and even the act of pausing for reflection. They can all be twisted, warped, and weaponized in the hands of someone skilled in the art of manipulation.
And when they do get it twisted, that's when self-doubt starts to creep in because you start questioning your own perceptions and your own sanity. And then you start apologizing for things you didn't even do. You start apologizing for having perfectly valid feelings.
Exactly. Which is precisely why this particular episode is so critically important. If you can't accurately name what's happening to you, if you don't have the vocabulary to describe those subtle forms of manipulation, you'll just be spinning in circles, constantly confused and off balance. But once you see it, once you truly recognize these patterns, you really can't unsee it.
No.
It's like putting on glasses and suddenly realizing the world isn't just a blurry mess.
Once you can't unsee it, you start to protect yourself.
So tonight, we are bravely diving headfirst into the murky waters of gaslighting. We're exposing the deceptive tactics of fake accountability. We're shining a spotlight on the often misunderstood nuances of the favored narcissism and the art of blame shifting. It's going to be an emotional roller coaster, folks. Buckle up.
It's not just about what they do to us, because bravely, we are looking at owning the uncomfortable times that we've done it too, because we're all human and we're all prone to our own moments of messy behavior.
Here's a cold, hard truth. If you can't honestly call out those manipulative behaviors in yourself, If you can't recognize your own potential for these patterns, you'll never, ever break the cycle. You'll just perpetuate the same dysfunction over and over again.
So, you ready to call out some nonsense tonight?
Yep. Bring it on, Meagan. Let's absolutely get right into it. I used to operate under the naive assumption that the only real danger in relationships were the loud, flashing, siren blaring ones, right? The yelling, the cussing, the dramatic blow-ups, the giant neon signs screaming, "Danger ahead!" But the stuff that truly messed up my head was the stuff that left me feeling utterly bewildered and questioning my own reality. And that wasn't loud at all. It was when people started deploying what sounded like healthy sounding language and subtly, meticulously flipping them on their head to gain control and manipulate the situation.
I can certainly relate with that. It's the kind of situation that makes you wonder if you're even still talking about the actual issue or if you've somehow become the issue yourself.
And that's the profound danger of it all. On the surface, it masquerades as mature, responsible communication. I'm just being honest, or I really need to set a healthy boundary here. I need to pause and take some time to think this through. You know, it sounds so reasonable, but it's often just a cleverly constructed dodge.
Or in some cases, it's just straight up stonewalling. That pause that they talked about, that pause never actually ended. And they never come back to the conversation. It just kind of evaporates into thin air. And that's when you're wondering if you ever even had this interaction and conversation to begin with, because they just pretended it never happened.
And the same exact thing applies to those seemingly innocent clarifying questions. I had someone with the most disarmingly calm demeanor hit me with, "Help me understand what you meant by that, Mark." Sounds like a normal question, right? But it wasn't just genuine intellectual curiosity. Oh no, it was a full-blown cross-examination. Every single answer I provided wasn't for their enlightenment. It was meticulously cataloged as ammo for the next subtle yet piercing jab.
I had someone pull that exact maneuver on me regarding a touchy family issue. And the instant that my recounting of events didn't perfectly align with theirs and what they had already heard through the family grapevine, suddenly I'm the unreliable narrator. And that wasn't a sincere desire to understand. That was aggressive. It was tactical, and it was an interrogation, and it was designed to discredit me.
My ex had a particularly potent version of this. She would constantly say, "Are you absolutely sure that's how it happened? Is that really what you remember, Mark? Is it really?" And after rounds of that psychological warfare, after being forced to constantly second guess my own perception, I legitimately started doubting my own memory. Eventually, it became so exhausting, so mentally taxing that I stopped bringing up any continuous issues at all. Because what's the point? It was easier to suffer in silence than to constantly battle for my own reality.
But the really uncomfortable and kind of cringeworthy part that we really, really don't like to admit, because it punctures our self-image of being the perpetually reasonable ones, is that we've all done it. Every single one of us.
I've certainly been guilty of that. I'd confidently declare, I just really need some space to process this right now. And if I'm being brutally honest with myself, what I really meant deep down was I absolutely do not want to deal with this uncomfortable situation. And I desperately am hoping by tomorrow that you'll have miraculously forgotten all about it. It's a strategic retreat disguised as emotional maturity.
No, guilty as charged. I would announce, I'm setting a healthy boundary here. But what I was really doing was just desperate to avoid any kind of direct conflict. It was a boundary of convenience and not necessarily one of true self-preservation.
And the truly psychologically perplexing part is that in the heat of the moment, it felt completely justified. Perfectly reasonable because I was using all the right buzzwords, right? But underneath that, the veneer of polished language, it was a pure, unadulterated manipulation dressed up in a self-help outfit.
Wait, that's what makes it so difficult in the moment to figure it out, because it sounds so mature, so emotionally intelligent. So if you dare to push back, if you dare to question their seemingly sensible approach, you automatically become the irrational and the emotional one.
Exactly. And that isn't just confined to romantic partners. Mind you, oh no, it spills over into every aspect of our lives. Family members, friends, co-workers. I've had relatives with those familiar condescending smiles say, I'm just being honest, dear, right before dropping a passive-aggressive bomb that left me stewing for days.
Or what about the classic, I'm just working on myself right now, which on the surface sounds admirable, right? But then nothing changes.
And that, my friends, is where things take a turn. When good, healthy tools designed for connection and understanding, get twisted and weaponized. You don't get to just lose the argument. You lose your fundamental footing. You lose your sense of stability, your internal compass. You start to feel like you're walking on quicksand.
And once you start to doubt yourself, once that toxic seed of self-doubt is planted and then nurtured, you inevitably stop speaking up altogether. You retreat, you censor yourself, and you become a shadow of your former, more assertive self.
Which, conveniently for the manipulator, is exactly where gaslighting subtly, silently sneaks right in.
Yep. Because at that point, it's not just about them dodging a little bit of accountability anymore. The stakes are much, much higher. And now it's about them brazenly rewriting your entire reality, editing your memories, and essentially performing a psychological mind meld where their version of events becomes yours.
It's one of those things where somebody skillfully avoids a bit of conflict. It's entirely different when they start confidently telling you that's what you saw and that's what you heard, or what you felt isn't even real.
And that, friends, is precisely where we need to venture next, into the shadowy realm of gaslighting and the utterly infuriating landscape of fake apologies that are expertly designed to keep you questioning your own sanity. You know what's truly mind-boggling? Is that I didn't even know the word gaslighting existed as like a concept until a few years ago. Like before that, I thought that like I was just fundamentally broken. Maybe I couldn't trust my own perceptions and my own judgment and my own memory. I really thought that the problem was inherent to me.
Same here, Megan. The sheer relief of finally having a name for that same phenomenon was like discovering a hidden map to some emotional freedom.
But for me, with my hearing loss, it was particularly brutal. Someone would say, that's not what I said, or you just didn't hear me right. And because of my physical limitation, the voice in my head would think, maybe I didn't. And then I would start questioning. So it wasn't actually my hearing that they were making me doubt. It was like a domino effect on my memory and my emotions. But you know what? On that topic, I actually have a kind of a funny but kind of rude story about that.
Oh, what's that?
So for our listeners, I've worn hearing aids since kindergarten, and I learned to read lips. And often when I meet someone new, like at the doctor's or at the grocery store, the other person will be talking and they'll turn away and not be facing me. So I have to interrupt them. And it usually goes like, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. Could you face me? I'm hearing impaired. And the number one response I receive is, oh, that's okay. Thanks.
Yeah, I know this is something that bothers you for sure. I would like to think that when people say that, though, it's not meant to be malicious, but what would be a better way to respond in a more respectful way for people?
I just wish that people would say what they mean, because when they say, oh, that's okay, what they're really saying is something like, oh, that's okay that you're hearing impaired. It's like, I wasn't asking your permission to be hearing impaired. I'm just asking for reasonable accommodations so I can be an active member of this conversation. And it's kind of funny just how rude that comment really is.
So basically what you're saying is that people should respond with something more like, oh, sorry, I didn't realize you were hearing impaired.
100%. That acknowledges the physical limitations and that I might need just a little bit of help to be a part of this conversation.
Thanks for sharing. That's just one example of how people can use these healthy communication tools, but are actually being rude. Now, you spoke earlier about how someone in your family weaponized your hearing loss and made you question your memory of events.
Mm-hmm.
I have a similar story. I had an ex who was an absolute master of memory manipulation and all that kind of game. Every single disagreement, no matter how minor or significant, would inevitably circle back to, are you sure that's what happened, Mark? I don't think you remember it right. Mm-hmm. Or after rounds of that psychological merry-go-round, I just stopped pushing back because honestly, it's just an exhausting battle and you're designed to lose. There's just no right way to do that.
Exactly. But it's not just the objective facts that they twist. It's your legitimate feelings. You bravely bring up something that hurt you and caused you pain. And they respond with, oh, you're too sensitive or you're overreacting. And suddenly, with a flick of their linguistic wrist, the problem isn't their hurtful action. The problem is that you dare to feel anything at all.
And then, to add insult to psychological injury, they hit you with that classic, infuriatingly disingenuous non-apology. The piece de la resistance of fake accountability. I'm so sorry you feel that way.
Oh, I just can't with that one. It's like the verbal equivalent of a passive-aggressive pat on the head.
It sounds superficially like an apology, doesn't it? It has the word sorry in it, after all, but it's fundamentally not an apology. It's a cunning blame shift is what it actually is. They're not actually owning what they did, not taking responsibility for their actions. Instead, they're ingenuously making you responsible for the inconvenient fact that you dared to be upset by their behavior.
Or what about the variation, like, I'm sorry you got hurt? Because, again, that sounds compassionate, right? But subtly and profoundly different from the truly accountable phrase, I'm sorry I hurt you, right? One genuinely validates your pain, acknowledges its existence, but the other definitely dodges any and all responsibility, leaving them free of blame.
You know, I've had someone flat out say with an air of dismissive finality, that's in the past, you really need to get over it. Drives me nuts. Which, when translated from manipulator speak into plain English, truly meant, I absolutely do not want to deal with this uncomfortable topic, so your ongoing pain and unresolved feelings simply don't matter to me. It's a unilateral declaration of emotional dismissal.
But the thing is, that calm and collected tone makes it so much worse because there's no yelling and there's no overt anger. There's no hostility, just a steady, almost benign, reasonable denial. And you, on the recipient end, end up thinking, maybe I am actually the problem here. Maybe my feelings are unwarranted.
Yep. And next thing you know, you're the one apologizing. I have on multiple occasions walked into an argument feeling genuinely hurt. And somehow, by the psychologically twisted end of the conversation, I'm the one saying sorry. It's like a magic trick where your feelings vanish and shame appears in its place.
It's emotional judo, pure and simple. They expertly flip the situation so that your perfectly natural reaction becomes the actual issue, conveniently distracting from their original offense. I have literally heard with my own two ears, despite my hearing impairment, yes, I wouldn't have said that if you hadn't gotten upset in the first place. It's like saying, no, your choice to say that hurtful thing was still your choice. Don't put that back on me, as if my reaction somehow retroactively caused your initial transgression. It's an illogical, self-serving circle of blame.
And it's the cumulative toll it takes. It's immersive, exhaustion, confusion, and an unsettling sensation of mental disarray. You consistently walk away from those conversations feeling utterly drained and dizzy and honestly a little bit crazy. as if your internal compass has been thoroughly scrambled.
It's literally insane.
It really is, because for them, it's not just about momentarily winning the argument or getting their way in the single interaction. It's about maintaining a tight grip on the entire narrative, controlling the storyline that should be your shared reality. If they can successfully make you doubt your own perception of reality, they know with chilling certainty that you'll inevitably lean on theirs. It's a calculated strategy for total control.
And that is precisely why we are shining a very bright and very uncomfortable spotlight here tonight. Because once you see gaslighting and fake relationships for the manipulative tactics that they are, you can finally stop carrying the burden of shame that was never yours to begin with.
You bravely, defiantly stop apologizing for the entirely valid act of just being hurt. You reclaim your right to claim and own your own feelings.
And even more importantly, you start trusting that vital, sometimes whispering, sometimes shouting, internal voice, again, it's your gut, and you realign with your own truth.
But here's the often unspoken truth. Gaslighting rarely makes a solo appearance. It's rarely a lone wolf in manipulation.
Yeah, and it typically brings out its charming but equally destructive cousins, narcissism, the ever-present art of blame shifting, and the entire enabling mess that often accompanies this dysfunctional dynamics. It's a whole dysfunctional family reunion.
And once you develop that keen eye for spotting the telltale signs of fake apologies, the subtle linguistic twists, you inevitably start to notice the much bigger, more ingrained patterns lurking just underneath the surface.
But that's where it gets tricky. Because now it's not just straightforward denial of reality, it's manipulation dressed up in the most appealing of costumes. It's the guise of love. It's the cloak of loyalty. Even the deceptive mask of support. It's emotional camouflage.
All right, Megan, let's confront the big one. The heavyweight champion of difficult personalities. Let's talk about narcissism. Okay, so narcissism. Boy, that's a word that people, bless their hearts, tend to throw around with casual abandon like confetti at a parade, isn't it? Everyone's a little narcissistic these days. But when you truly lived it, when you've experienced it up close and personal, you know the stark, undeniable difference between someone who's just been selfish for a blue moon and someone whom everything, and I mean everything, irrevocably bends back to them. It's like the universe literally revolves around their ego.
So, with a true capital N narcissist, it's not just a quirky personality trait like an endearing habit of talking to yourself. No, it is an entire self-serving environment that they construct around themselves. Every conversation, no matter how it starts, inevitably, almost even magically, bends and makes its way back to them. And your needs and your feelings, even your own existence, only registers on their radar if they somehow in some way leverage those things for their own benefit.
I've had someone who could skillfully twist every single conversation, no matter how benign, into a self-centered narrative. If I dared to utter the phrase, "I'm tired," suddenly with an almost unbelievable pivot, the conversation would be about how they were significantly more tired, more burdened, more utterly exhausted than I can ever fathom. If I was hurt, they somehow become the ultimate victim in this scenario, often through a truly spectacular feat of blame shifting. It's amazing how they manage to consistently play a game of emotional one-upsmanship.
Oh, the competition game. Who's the most exhausted? Who's the most stressed out? Who's the most tragically underappreciated soul on the planet? It's like a contest that no one actually wins, but they always believe that they have the gold medal in their hand.
And if you, in a moment of sheer courage or perhaps utter foolishness, I guess, the dare to even attempt to set a simple boundary with a true narcissist, it's like lighting a very, very short fuse on a very unstable emotional bomb. You better prepare for impact.
Oh, the boundary backlash. It's an almost predictable yet always jarring response. They'll instantly, and often with great theatricality, label you as cold, utterly selfish, or even, in a truly heartbreaking accusation, disloyal. I've had family members with tears in their eyes gasp, "Oh, you'd really turn your back on your own family over?"
Same exact experience here. And that guilt trip, that expertly applied emotional pressure works like a charm, doesn't it? For a while, at least, because deep down you genuinely don't want to be perceived as the bad guy, the unfeeling monster who turns their back on loved ones. You strive for connection and belonging, don't you?
Until one glorious yet profoundly painful day, you have the epiphany when you realize enabling is not love. It's a distorted, unhealthy substitute. It's an act of perpetuating dysfunction. It's not nurturing connection.
There's an almost insurmountable difference between genuinely supporting someone and actively, often unknowingly, enabling them. True support says, with an open heart and a steady hand, I will walk alongside you on this journey of growth and healing, offering encouragement and a helping hand when you stumble. Enabling, on the other hand, says with a weary sigh and perpetually bent back, I will carry you indefinitely, no matter how many times you make the same exact detrimental choice, because I'm afraid of what will happen if I don't.
But enabling doesn't just hurt you, the long suffering enabler. It actively and often profoundly props up their dysfunction. And it creates a perverse incentive for them to remain exactly where they are because there's no real consequences for them. And so you become an unwitting accomplice to their stagnation.
I once had a relative who, every time I tried to create some emotional distance, would masterfully turn the tables. I guess you just don't care about me anymore, do you? For years, I carried the heavy burden of that manufactured guilt. Then, one day, it finally clicked. Genuine caring isn't about constantly covering for someone else's poor choices or constantly bailing them out. It's allowing them to experience the natural consequences of their own actions, even when it's uncomfortable for everyone involved. Stopping enablement sometimes requires tough love. Maybe you might face guilt trips or gaslighting in response. In fact, more than likely you will. That person being enabled often won't immediately see the benefit or necessity of this approach.
But that realization and that moment of clarity, it's brutal because the second you stop enabling, the dynamic of the relationship fundamentally changes and it shifts on its axis and often not in a comfortable way.
Or, perhaps more accurately, it ends. Sometimes quite dramatically.
Oh, I've definitely had relationships lost over this very issue. And as agonizingly painful as that experience was in the moment, and as much as it felt like a part of me was being torn away from me, the profound sense of peace and self-respect that I gained from finally establishing those boundaries without a shadow of a doubt worth every single heartache. It was painful, but it was a liberating trade-off.
And same here. The people who genuinely, authentically wanted to grow, to evolve, to engage in a healthy reciprocal relationship, they stayed. They adjusted. The ones who were just interested in me playing my designated role in their meticulously crafted script, the ones who wanted me to perpetually enable their dysfunction, they're the ones that left. And honestly, looking back with the clarity of hindsight, I should have had the courage to let them go much, much sooner. It would have saved me a lot of emotional real estate, I'll tell you that much.
But that's the crux of it, Mark, because boundaries don't destroy genuinely healthy relationships. They reveal them and they act as a litmus test for them. So if the relationship simply cannot survive the introduction of a clear, firm boundary, then be brutally honest, it was fundamentally broken to begin with. The boundary just exposed a pre-existing crack.
Exactly. And for me personally, learning to truly differentiate between genuine enabling and authentic support was a game changer of monumental proportions. Because I used to exhaust myself, explaining myself to death, hoping that I just worded it precisely right. And if I just found the perfect combination of logical arguments and emotional appeals, they would finally get it.
But I did the same thing. And the relentless and the utter futility of over explaining just ended with more frustration.
Yeah. And here's the brutal truth: it never, ever worked, not once. Because they weren't actually seeking understanding, were they? No, not truly. What they craved, what they relentlessly pursued, was absolute control. Understanding was merely a means to an end. It just served their purpose, followed by justification for their actions.
That's precisely why boundaries don't just matter, they're utterly essential. It's not just about saying, this is my line, here's where I end and where you begin. It's also about firmly, confidently stating, I am no longer going to waste any of my precious energy justifying why the line exists in the first place. The boundary speaks for itself.
Exactly. Boundaries without the unwavering courage of enforcement are simply just plain suggestions, easily disregarded whispers in the wind.
But enabling, when it's cunningly disguised as admirable loyalty, will keep you firmly stuck in a perpetual cycle of dysfunction and emotional stagnation forever. It is a cage you unknowingly build for yourself.
Which is precisely why developing the keen eye to spot narcissism, the subtle art of blame shifting, and the trap of enabling isn't just putting convenient labels on people or diagnosing their character flaws. It's fundamentally about reclaiming your own peace of mind, your emotional sovereignty, and your right to a healthy reciprocal existence.
Perhaps even more vitally, it's your freedom to be authentically yourself without constantly performing for anyone else's ego.
But here's the crucial caveat: the important distinction we need to make: not every single messy, uncomfortable moment in a relationship is, by default, an act of calculated manipulation. We need to avoid becoming overly paranoid.
That's true because some people are just genuinely struggling with their own internal demons, their own insecurities, their own challenges, and they're not necessarily scheming or plotting to undermine you. They're just messy humans trying to navigate a complicated world.
People being people.
Thanks, Dad. People be people.
Yep.
Yep.
Say you do marry your dad.
Oh.
We don't have to keep that. But anyway. Which is precisely where it gets delightfully or frustratingly tricky. And then how do you discern the difference? How do you tell the genuine heartfelt struggle of someone truly fighting their demons from the calculated self-serving actions of someone who is merely using you for their own twisted ends?
That, Mark, is what we are going to unpack next. That's the $1,000,000 question.
This is where things get really nuanced. Not every difficult or messy situation you encounter with someone signals manipulation. It's crucial to remember that some individuals are genuinely battling their own demons or grappling with some deep-seated issues, or they are just truly struggling.
Oh, absolutely. And those of us who by nature possess a compassionate or an empathetic heart, which I know we both do, becomes incredibly challenging to differentiate between offering genuine help and simply being exploited or played. And the lines can be so easily blurred.
I've been there countless times. People have cried, made solemn promises of change, desperately pleaded for just one more chance. And in those moments, I truly wanted to believe them. I wanted to see the best in them. After the 10th iteration of the same exact story, the same crisis, the same emotional appeal, the crucial question begins to form in your mind. Is this true personal growth, or is this simply a well-rehearsed performance designed to elicit a specific response?
Oh, without a doubt, I have had those conversations where the tears flowing seemed like carefully positioned stage lighting rather than authentic cathartic breakthrough, and the emotional display feels performative and not transformative.
The waterworks. Yep, very familiar with those. The grand, heartfelt speeches, the elaborate apologies. But then when you observe their actions, absolutely nothing changes. Yet the pattern persists.
And that's where the term asshole becomes fitting. You know, the individual who incessantly solicits advice, swears up and down that they're listening intently, and then proceeds to completely ignore every single piece of guidance. Inevitably, by the next week, they reappear with the same crisis, the same problem, and the same request for help, having made no progress whatsoever.
Ah, yes, the Askhole. Before you know it, you find yourself stuck in the metaphorical hamster wheel alongside them. You invest your energy, your precious time, your valuable emotional support, and it's always the same rerun, the same predictable cycle of inaction.
But in stark contrast, someone who is genuinely struggling or genuinely committed to overcoming their challenges will actually do something with the help, the advice, or the support that they receive. They might stumble, they might make mistakes. That's part of the process, of course. But you will unmistakably see effort. You will observe small incremental changes, not necessarily perfection, but a clear and undeniable direction towards improvement.
Progress doesn't have to be a neat or perfectly linear. It can be messy and full of setbacks. But there's an undeniable feeling, a palpable sense you get when someone is truly, authentically trying to make a difference in their own life.
But on the painful flip side, you can instinctively feel it when you're being used, when your generosity is being exploited. The clearest sign, no matter how much you give, your time, your energy, your resources, it's never enough.
And that for me was a profound and difficult lesson I had to learn. My role is not to be their white knight here.
Mhm.
And if they are genuinely struggling and demonstrating a willingness to actively fight for change, I can absolutely walk alongside them, offer support, and be a resource for them, of course. But if they are purely manipulating, merely performing to maintain a certain dynamic, then I am doing neither them nor, crucially, myself any favors by continuing to play into their narrative. It's enabling, not helping.
But that's such a critically important line to draw because compassion, when utterly devoid of discernment, will inevitably drain you completely dry, leaving you depleted and resentful.
And I had to fully own that truth as well, because sometimes it wasn't even them manipulating me. It was me ignoring the undeniable truth, me refusing to acknowledge the reality of the situation, simply because I did not want to let go of the fantasy of whom I thought that person was.
I agree. Same.
And letting go, particularly of someone you care about or a situation you are invested in, is brutal. It's incredibly painful, but ultimately, it is far, far better than clinging indefinitely to a performance that will never evolve into genuine connection or growth.
And that's why understanding the distinction matters so immensely. Because if you cannot accurately tell the difference between manipulation and genuine struggle, you're never going to know when you need to lean in with support and when you need to wisely step back for your own well-being.
And speaking of stepping back, it would be disingenuous, even hypocritical, for us to present ourselves as though we have always had the concept perfectly figured out.
Oh, absolutely. We have both, at various points in our lives, employed some of these very same unhealthy tactics ourselves.
Yep, which is precisely why the next part of our conversation isn't about them. No, no, no. It's about us.
It's about the times when we got it fundamentally wrong and the difficult and often painful journey that it took to finally own our contributions to those dynamics. Okay? So let's deliberately turn the spotlight around for a moment and shine it squarely on ourselves. Because it would be incredibly easy and, frankly, very comfortable to sit here and simply point fingers at everyone else's baggage and problematic behaviors.
Yeah, but if we're committed to being truly honest with ourselves and with our audience, we have to admit that we both pulled some of these same manipulative or unhealthy moves ourselves in the past.
Definitely. I distinctly remember a period where I used to subtly guilt trip others without fully realizing the manipulative nature of my actions. It would manifest in little phrases like, if you really cared, you would, or through a tactic of giving the silent treatment. And in my own head at the time, I convinced myself that it wasn't manipulation because I framed it as protecting myself. But in truth, what I was doing was actively avoiding the discomfort and vulnerability of engaging in difficult, honest conversations.
And same here. Absolutely. For me, my go-to unhealthy coping mechanism was avoidance. I confidently declare that I needed space, but honestly, I was simply running away from the problem, hoping it would magically disappear. I genuinely believed if I ignored it long enough, maybe the issue would resolve itself. Spoiler alert, it never ever did.
That's the inconvenient truth about problems. They possess this uncanny ability to persist and often escalate precisely because you choose to look the other way.
And I can freely admit I have, in the past, weaponized boundaries. I would use them not as healthy parameters, but as protective measures, but like the impenetrable walls to keep others out rather than bridges for clear communication. I declare this is my boundary. When what I actually meant deep down was, I absolutely do not want to talk about this difficult topic right now, and you cannot make me engage. It's actually a defensive tactic, not a healthy assertion.
But I've definitely played the same processing card, claiming that I needed time to process things, when in reality, I just didn't want to engage in the uncomfortable reality or the other person's perspective. So I would conveniently label it as self-care. But at its core, it was really just a sophisticated way of dodging accountability.
And here's the kicker. At the time, in those moments, my actions felt completely justified because I had all the right words, all the perfectly articulated excuses and rationalizations.
Oh my gosh, I sounded so wise. And like, look at me, I'm setting healthy boundaries, like the picture of emotional maturity. But underneath all that polished language, I was really just terrified.
Same. It wasn't born out of strength or genuine self-awareness. It was entirely driven by fear.
So the real turning point for me was this profound realization that being genuinely healthy isn't about merely saying the right things or having the perfect vocabulary. It's about actually doing the hard things. It's about courageously having the uncomfortable conversation and the difficult truths. And most importantly, admitting when you are wrong without defensiveness or blame.
For me, the pivotal moment arrived when I heard myself articulating the various same healthy words and phrases that I once utterly despised when other people use them on me.
Mm-hmm.
The realization clicked into place. I had, in essence, become the very thing I disliked, the very pattern I critiqued in others.
That's really humbling, isn't it?
Yeah, deeply so. And it taught me a crucial lesson: owning your mess. Taking responsibility for your own unhealthy patterns isn't a one-time event or a checkbox you tick off. It's an ongoing, continuous process of self-reflection and adjustment.
Because if we're unable or unwilling to admit our own manipulative patterns, our own contributions to unhealthy dynamics, then we're never going to break free from those cycles and we're going to be destined to repeat them.
Which is precisely why we share this with you. Not because we've somehow achieved perfect communication or mastered every healthy dynamic, but because we've genuinely been there too, in the messy middle.
And our hope is this: if we can grow from the entrenched patterns, if we can learn to communicate effectively and authentically, then so can you.
So, now that we've openly laid out our junk on the table, the good, the bad, and the ugly, what does truly unhealthy communication actually look like in practice?
Enough about the wreckage. Let's shift our focus to what the process of rebuilding, of constructing something better, actually looks like.
The fundamental shifts we personally made, the dramatically different way we now approach and navigate conflict.
And what a real apology, real supportive behavior, and real conflict resolution sound like, feel like in the everyday reality of our relationships.
So, after everything we've discussed, the sanity changing nature of gaslighting, the exhausting dance of blame shifting, the subtle dangers of enabling unhealthy behaviors, the colossal question that looms is, what does truly healthy communication actually look like? And what's the positive alternative?
Those are all really important questions to answer, because it's not merely enough to become adept at spotting what's fundamentally wrong or dysfunctional. The real power lies in recognizing and understanding and even cultivating what's genuinely right and what is constructive.
The most significant transformation for me was the arduous process of learning to offer a genuine apology. Not the hollow, I'm sorry you feel that way, which subtly shifts the blame, nor the I'm sorry, but, yep, there's that word but, with its inherent justifications. A true apology means unequivocally owning your part, your impact, and your mistake. I've even touched on apologies and conflict in earlier episodes, specifically episodes 1 and 3, which you might find helpful.
An authentic apology sends a clear message: I hurt you. I take full responsibility for my actions and their consequences. Crucially, these words must be consistently reinforced through your subsequent behavior. An apology is not merely verbal, it is demonstrated through actions.
All right. You're absolutely right. I remember the very first time I managed to offer a truly unreserved apology. It felt like I was literally choking on it. My ego, my pride, all deeply ingrained defenses fought desperately to justify my actions, defend my intentions, and provide elaborate explanations for what I did.
Oh, you do love your explanations.
I do. Guilty as charged. But here's the transformative thing. Once I finally managed to drop all those cumbersome defenses, I simply said clearly and sincerely, I was wrong. I'm truly sorry. I realized something profound. The world didn't implode. In fact, that single act of vulnerability built more trust, established a deeper connection, and created more understanding than all previous elaborate explanations ever could have achieved.
It's precisely that same experience for me, because my old patterns involved deflecting and tears and retreating into silence and launching into exhaustive over explanations. But when I finally truly said with genuine humility, I messed up and I genuinely want to do better, and a sense of profound peace kind of came over me. It was a peace I hadn't really experienced before in those difficult moments.
And here's the fundamental difference we're talking about. In toxic communication, you inevitably leave the interaction feeling utterly drained, questioning your own sanity, and often replaying every single word. Just like we discussed earlier, it's no wonder overthinking interactions carries over into healthy relationships, that it's from learned behaviors and past interactions. However, when you're finally in a healthy relationship with healthy communication, even when the conversation itself is difficult, even when it's challenging, you invariably leave with clarity. You leave with a sense of understanding and a resolution.
So I don't walk away from a healthy, difficult conversation wondering if I'm losing my mind or if my perceptions are constantly distorted. I walk away knowing precisely where we stand, what the agreed upon next step is, and most importantly, with the reassuring conviction that we are still fundamentally on the same page, working towards a shared goal.
And that in itself is absolutely huge, because now when disagreements arise, and they do sometimes, we fight with each other, standing side by side against the problem rather than fighting against each other. We're not enemies here. We're on the same team. That doesn't mean we magically agree on everything. We still disagree. Sometimes quite passionately, if I'm being honest. We're human. In fact, there's nothing wrong with having those heated disagreements. We're all different people.
Mhm.
But when you're going to have those, make every effort to do it with respect and love, because the end result should be productive.
Yes, it might be difficult, but learning communication to resolve conflict is key. We definitely do disagree passionately sometimes.
True, but the critical difference is we no longer weaponize those disagreements.
Mhm.
We don't use them as ammunition to hurt or try and control each other.
Mm.
Instead, we deliberately use them as opportunities to understand each other better and to gain deeper insight into each other's perspective and needs.
So the ultimate goal isn't winning the argument anymore. The overriding goal is always a connection and always strengthening the bond that's between us.
Exactly. And when I feel a familiar surge of defensiveness rising within me now, I learned to pause and ask myself a clarifying question. Do I want to win the point, or do I want to be close to this person? A single question that shift in perspective truly changes everything how I approach the interaction.
The other monumental shift for us has been about boundaries. We used to approach them dysfunctionally, either using them as weapons or to push people away, or as flimsy excuses to even avoid responsibility. But now we employ them like sturdy guardrails, not to push each other away, but paradoxically to protect the foundation of what we're trying to build together.
Yeah, a truly healthy boundary isn't about exercising control over another person. It's fundamentally about clarity. It articulates, here's what I'm capable of giving you right now, and here's what I genuinely cannot provide at this moment. And then, in a healthy dynamic, the other person respects that boundary rather than attempting to twist it, test it, or even manipulate it.
Okay, that respect key is absolutely huge and is often underestimated because we might vehemently disagree on something, but we still maintain a deep and abiding respect for each other's individual experiences, their feelings, and their perspective. That fundamental respect alone dramatically alters the entire tone and the outcome of any of our difficult conversations.
And I think that's precisely why I can spot red flags and manipulative tactics so much faster and so much more clearly now. Because once you genuinely experience what real support feels like, what truly attentive listening sounds like, and what a sincere, humble apology embodies, the fake manipulative stuff becomes almost painfully obvious. It stands out like a sore thumb.
Yeah, it's like your internal emotional system gets completely reset. And once you definitively know what healthy communication feels like and what genuine connection feels like, you simply stop settling for anything less. Your tolerance for the unhealthy dramatically decreases.
So the natural question that follows is, how do you actually get there? How do you move from the old patterns into this new, healthier way of interacting? Speaking of interacting and conflict, look for our upcoming Communicating Through Conflict journal as a guided communication tool to lead those conversations to and through resolution.
That is really helpful. Something, in fact, that we started using to help us through our conflict. It's one thing to just say, apologize better or set clear boundaries. But in the actual, like, high stakes moment of a heated conversation, you need concrete, actionable tools.
We're talking practical stuff, specific phrases, specific techniques things you can actually employ and effectively use in the heat of a challenging discussion, not just abstract theories.
Which is precisely why we are going to share a few of our absolute favorite, most effective practical tools now. Some of these will also be in the Communication Through Conflict journal. And if you'd like to request yours, email conflict to podcast@milemarkermindset.com today.
Some of the tools in this are things that help us transition from a state of relational wreckage to a proactive process of rebuilding stronger and healthier communications and connections. Okay.
So, after absorbing all of that information and understanding the nuances of healthy versus unhealthy communication, people might naturally be thinking, okay, but how do I actually handle this when it's happening right in front of me in real time?
Yeah, like what do you actually say when someone is deliberately twisting your words or artfully pushing your emotional buttons or trying to derail the conversation? What are the practical responses?
Exactly. Because in the intensely emotional heat of the moment, you don't need abstract theory or complex psychological frameworks. You need something concrete, something you can actually do, and effectively navigate the situation.
So, here are three incredibly powerful yet remarkably simple things that have genuinely helped both of us. They are simple, they are practical, and absolutely no advanced degree are required to implement any of them.
The first one, stay on track.
Yep, when someone is attempting to spin you in circles, trying to introduce countless distractions, or pulling you into irrelevant side arguments, your job is to identify the single most important point or issue that matters and calmly and repeatedly stick to it. Don't let them change the subject on you. Do not allow yourself to be dragged into all the tangential, often manipulative side arguments.
Because manipulators absolutely thrive on distraction. They will skillfully lead you down countless rabbit trails, throwing red herrings until you completely forget what core issue you even brought up in the first place. But if you consistently and calmly, firmly keep coming back to the central line, for example, no, this is what I said, this is what I meant, and this is my boundary, they will eventually run out of road. They will run out of diversions and they will be forced to address the actual point.
Yeah, you don't need to yell. You don't need to resort to asking a bunch of questions or explaining it 20 different ways or getting all emotional over it. Just stay on track like a laser focus.
Second tool, say less, stress less.
This one in particular has been an absolute game changer for both of us. It's a profound realization. You simply do not owe every person in your life a full, exhaustive explanation for all your choices, your decisions, or your boundaries.
Just because someone close to you asks a question does not mean you are obligated to provide them with a 10-minute detailed backstory explaining your every thought and your motivation. Be concise, be clear, give a direct answer. It's not only sufficient, but it's effective.
Honestly, the less extraneous information, the fewer details you provide, the less material they have to twist, to misinterpret, or to use against you. It limits their manipulative leverage.
I've had to personally learn that delivering short, direct answers is not a sign of being rude or being disrespectful. On the contrary, it is a profound act of wisdom and self preservation. It protects your inner peace and your emotional energy.
Yeah, same here. And now the third equally powerful one, don't take the bait.
Oh, this one is so challenging in practice, but when you master it, it's profoundly liberating.
When someone deliberately pokes at you or makes a snide comment or throws out an accusation, your immediate knee-jerk instinct is almost always to defend yourself or argue back or launch into an explanation. But the very second you take the bait, the moment you engage with their provocative statement, you are instantly sucked into their game playing by their rules.
Here's the brutal truth of that, it's a game that you are never ever going to win. Because their objective is not to find the truth or to find a common ground or even to find a resolution. Their objective is to assert control over the conversation, over you, and over the narrative.
So paradoxically, the strongest and most powerful move you can sometimes make is complete silence. Or perhaps a simple, firm, yet calm statement like, that's not true. And then critically, stop right there. No further explanation, no further engagement.
You just simply don't have to justify your existence, your choices, your reality every single time someone tries to twist things or distort your words. That burden is just simply not yours to carry.
That realization was monumental for me. Because once I genuinely stopped biting every single hook that was dangled in front of me, I could physically feel an immense weight lift off my shoulders. The constant pressure defending myself dissipated.
But that's the point, and that's the core here of all these tools that we're trying to share with you today. They're not about winning an argument. They're not about dominating a conversation. It's fundamentally maintaining your emotional equilibrium, preserving your boundaries, and keeping your own peace intact.
So stay on track, say less, and don't take the bait.
That's it. 3 remarkably simple yet profoundly effective tools that you can begin implementing immediately starting today.
And speaking of today, we've got a practical, actionable challenge for you to take on this week.
Yes, we do. Because even the most brilliant tools are utterly useless if you don't actively practice using them and integrate them into your daily interactions.
So here is our simple yet incredibly powerful challenge for you.
We want you to pick just one of these practical tools we talked about. Just one, no more.
Yeah. Resist the urge to try and master all 3 at once. That's a recipe for overwhelm. Instead, simply pick this one single tool that resonates most deeply with you right now. The one that hits hardest or feels most applicable to your current situation and your current communication struggles.
Maybe, for instance, it's stay on track because you become acutely aware that you frequently get spun in circles. You're consistently sidetracked and derailed in conversations, losing sight of your original point.
Or perhaps it's say less, stress less, because you've recognized a pattern of habitually oversharing personal details or extensive explanations with people who simply haven't earned it or don't deserve that level of access to your inner world.
Or maybe, just maybe, it's don't take the bait because you are profoundly tired, emotionally exhausted from perpetually defending yourself to individuals who deep down aren't actually interested in hearing or accepting the truth that you offer.
Whatever that specific tool is for you, clearly identify it. And then the very next time you feel yourself being pulled into an unhealthy, unproductive, or manipulative conversation, take a deliberate pause, just a moment, then consciously, intentionally use that one chosen tool.
And please, whatever you do, don't beat yourself up or fall into that self-criticism. If it feels awkward, clunky, or unnatural at first, it's not just normal. It's an absolute expected part of the learning process. You are actively practicing something new, something that requires rewiring old habits.
Exactly. True process doesn't demand immediate perfection. It simply means that you are no longer passively stuck in the same old damaging cycle. You are actively working to break free.
And if you're sitting there right now, perhaps feeling a little overwhelmed, thinking, man, this sounds incredibly hard. I don't even know where to begin. Please know that that's completely okay. That raw, honest feeling is precisely why we're here, why we're creating this.
Listen, don't hesitate to reach out to me at coaching@milemarkermindset because we've walked through these very same messy, confusing, and often painful landscapes ourselves. And we intimately understand how incredibly challenging and isolating it can feel if you think you're alone.
You absolutely do not have to figure all of this out alone. There is support available. By the way, if you're in a crisis, any type of crisis, and you don't know where to start, please go to milemarkermindset.com/crisis help for a full list of support resources.
Okay. All right. A final word of wisdom for tonight, a simple mantra to carry with you.
Drive truck, caps check.
Which just means focus intentionally on what you can genuinely control within your sphere of influence.
And let God handle the rest. Trust that some things are just beyond your soul capacity.
And remember, folks, your past methods of dealing with conflict does not define your future. Once you learn better ways to handle these tough situations and your mindset shifts, that is when the real change happens.
That's right. Learn the tools. Reserve your copy of the conflict journal. Practice what you learned in your life, and you'll eventually make the habit of using that when the situation arises for them.
That's right, Meagan. It all starts with taking the first step. And once your mindset shifts, you shift your life.
Keep an eye out for the next show. It's going to be a good one. Mark is interviewing my Aunt Julie, who is a retired and very successful family attorney turned influencer. She brings her lessons learned from law and life in general. You're not going to want to miss it.
Absolutely. That is going to be a good show for sure. Meanwhile, thank you all so much for sticking with us. Hey, by the way, Meagan, thank you so much for joining me on the show today. It's been fun. If people want to know more about you and follow you, where can they do so at?
I am on Instagram. It's Meagan Keith.
And by the way, don't forget to follow the show, Mile Marker Mindset, on all the socials, as well as for myself, Real Mark Keith. I will see y'all next time. God bless. Bye.
The Mile Marker Mindset podcast is for informational, inspirational, educational, and entertainment purposes only. This podcast is not a substitute for professional or clinical advice. If you are in crisis or need immediate help, please visit milemarkermindset.com/crisis help or call 911.